How's it going, guys? And I'm here with a review of Venom Let There Be Carnage, or Venom 2 if you prefer. But I really like the subtitle for this one. I think that was an excellent choice. So overall, I have to say, being a fan of the first movie, this was definitely what you'd want in a sequel. And for someone that have been waiting for Carnage for a very long time in these films. It was great to finally get to see it and to have the role be filled by an actor as good as Woody Harrelson. I said if you go back and watch my review of the first Venom film, I said during that end credits scene that Woody Harrelson already had really engrossed me in the character of Cletus Cassidy, and he does a magnificent job in this film. I mean, definitely a show stealer. I mean, Tom Hardy is amazing, but that performance that Woody Harrelson gives in this film is, to me, is like the perfect Carnage. Like almost on par with the performance of the voiceover actor for the 90s cartoon, the Fox Kids Spider-Man. I mean, this is how I'd want a Cletus Cassie to look in real life. Now, it's crazy that an actor as well known as Woody Harrelson would actually be the man to play it. But really, if you look at those classic comic book panels, this is Cletus Cassie. I'm looking at him like it. To me, it looks like. I know some other people said they questioned this and they said like other actors would have looked better. No, for me, I think this was the perfect pick. And you could argue and say this is who they gave us, and I'm not really looking at the other choices. But for me, I think this is just the best, one of the best casting choices I've seen in quite some time. So overall, as far as the story goes, I mean, I was looking before I decided to do this review on like the origins of Carnage and Cletus Cassidy. It looks like they pretty much followed this quite closely. The orphanage, Cletus Cassidy's troubled past. He actually did not kill his mother in the comics. That was done by his father. He did kill his grandmother. They did show that. I liked also how they illustrated as he's telling his story to Eddie Brock, to Tom Hardy. They show you kind of these creepy little cartoons they put together. But these scenes where you have Cletus in captivity talking to Eddie Brock, and he likes Eddie Brock, and he wants him to print his story and put quotes in there, and Brock is taking notes. Meanwhile, you have Patrick Mulligan, who's the detective here, who I didn't even know that guy is Toxin until I actually looked it up, because there is the matter of him at the end where you'll see there's like a pivotal scene where it looks like he's just getting the shit beat out of him by Shriek, who's played by I had to look at her name here, Naomi Harris, who's also going to be in another film I'm going to see, the newest James Bond film, No Time to Die. So I'm also looking forward to seeing that. I'm also going to be reviewing it here, of course. But we see him with the flashing blue eyes at the end, and seems like you're going to be doing something with that character. Perhaps he'll be turning into Toxin. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But this, this rapport that Eddie Brock and Cletus Cassidy have when they're talking face to face while he's in his cell, I really love these moments of dialogue. On his way out, Venom notices that there are some drawings on a cell wall. I guess this is the where he usually is kept. There's like all these different drawings, and it actually shows where all his victims are buried. So now he is going to get the death penalty. And as Eddie Brock is once again visiting Cletus Cassidy, Venom gets the idea to grab Cletus Cassidy after they have an exchange, and there's some insults thrown around. Some of the symbiote gets on Cletus, and this is how he ends up becoming Carnage. So, once again, some people are going to be unhappy about this change from the comics, but of course, I never understand this. We've talked about this probably in every single comic book movie that I have reviewed. If you're watching these films and you want them to be a point for point to the comics, you're just never going to get that. And so I don't know why. I mean, I know that if it's not something within Disney's MCU, they're going, fans are always going to attack it even harder because it's Sony, but so be it. But anyway, I just really enjoyed this. As I said, the Cletus Cassidy performance is great. Now, Shriek, who they don't really call her by her name, they just call her Frances, but she still has the powers, and they think that she is dead for a while, and even Cletus thinks that she is dead. But he finds out that she's alive. Even Patrick Mulligan, who is the one who actually believes that he killed Shriek because he shoots her, but it turns out that the bullet only hit her eye and she survives, and they're only keeping her in this underground part of Ravencroft. So she's kind of been there all along, it seems. So you have this part where Eddie Brock is fighting with Venom, and Venom kind of goes off on his own, and there's a breakup. And I really like this type of relationship that they have. The dialogue, I know a lot of people didn't like this. They see it as cheesy, and I really don't understand why people feel that way. That was the big criticism for the first film. Oh, the way they're going back and forth. This is Eddie Brock's conscience. The symbiote and him are one and the same. So, of course, it would make sense that they would talk to each other to communicate. And the fact that they bring that, onto the screen for you to see, I think just really elaborates on the character. Because we could just have Eddie Brock operating and you could just see it. But, why not give a little show and tell at the same time? I think that this was one of the best decisions they made in the first film, and it carries over nicely here. Also, it needs to be noted that Andy Serkis is the director for this film. A pretty popular actor, a guy that's been in quite a few films, a veteran actor. And I think he does a really marvelous job putting this whole package together. I think it works out really well. And it's a really good sequel, I feel. I mean, it hits all the right notes. There's some really good fight scenes. I really couldn't have asked for a better introduction of Carnage in these films. Now, I wasn't entirely crazy about the fact that they killed off Carnage at the end. I mean, I found that to be kind of surprising. I kind of had a feeling they were going to go in that direction. But now this kind of closes the door on any Carnage returns or anything like that for future films. We do see, however, though, in the end credits that we have a nice little lead in to now Venom being in the same universe as Spider-Man, as the Tom Holland Spider-Man. So is he going to make an appearance in No Way Home? I suppose that he is. I mean, I know we've got Doc Ock in there, but we don't really know who the main villain is going to be of that film, it seems. I mean, that's the only confirmed villain. So you'd have to think that they're probably going to have him in there. I mean, they've been really keeping quite quiet about No Way Home. They've definitely been quite tight-lipped on it. We don't really even know, so much to the point where they're really shaky about actually coming out and saying that officially Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are going to be in there. They've hinted at it, but you don't really hear too much from the studio on that, and I find that quite interesting, which makes me kind of look forward to the film even more when it comes out this December. Seems like they've got a lot of wackiness planned for that film and a lot of playing around with the universe, and that's really interesting, that they're diving a little bit deeper. They're not keeping it as basic as it could be. And, at times I'm not really a fan always of making things more complicated, because sometimes simplicity is key. And I felt, that's one of the strong suits of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. They weren't crazy, all over the place, multiverse kind of things, but you kind of get that here. But it is interesting. It definitely is mysterious, and you kind of want to see where it's going to go. Now, as far as we're going to talk about some of these characters here, so as I said, Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson, just fantastic as always. Also, the effects are just off the charts when it comes to Carnage and how he looks, and it's everything that I could have ever wanted him to look in a film. The movie version of Carnage is very, very accurate to the comic book, in my opinion. Shriek, not so much. They don't really give her a costume. They kind of just give her, just a normal look. And, they do have the effect of Shriek yelling. And I like this little dynamic of how Carnage and Cletus, the symbiote and Cletus himself are arguing because Shriek's power is that supersonic yell, and the symbiote is allergic to sonic sounds like that, really loud noises. And we even have this point where the symbiote wants to attack, and you see like Cletus, calling out, trying to break through the symbiote, and you see his face being like, no, you're hurting her. Really interesting dynamic, and you kind of see how even the symbiote, even though it likes Cletus because he's completely insane and just has a thirst for violence, so it's it's the right fit, but it isn't really the right fit because even the symbiote is too evil for Cletus to the point where he can't even control it, and I like that because I don't think they ever addressed that. When they had that multi-part Maximum Carnage arc, I don't think they ever addressed the fact that Screech's power is actually something that a symbiote would not like. I don't think that they did. I don't really remember it too well point for point, but I thought that was an interesting dynamic that they did introduce. And Shriek doesn't really talk a lot in this. Like I said, they don't even mention her name, which is something that is kind of common. You kind of think about Spider-Man Homecoming. There's never one point where they actually say the Vulture. They never actually say that. And there's been other examples of that throughout. I kind of like when the villains just announce who they are. I mean, it kind of just makes a bit more sense. But I don't know, in movies, in these films, it's always like they try to hide who they are. Then they just assume that oh, the fans know who they are. And that's kind of always bugged me. I know it's not really a big deal because we all know who they are. But with a more minor character like Shriek, I think it would have been nice for them to kind of fill people in on who this is. And like I said, it is interesting also where they're going to go with this Mulligan character, how this is the character who turns into Toxin. But now with Carnage out of the way, I mean, that's really where they could have went with this in a third Venom film. Expand on it. You could have had Scream, Toxin, and all the others just lined up behind Carnage, and the odds would be stacked against Venom, and then you could have cool crossovers like Spider-Man and Venom teaming up to stop Carnage. But now you killed them off, and now you kind of can't do that unless now this alternate universe thing that they did in the credits scene is going to erase all that, because now we're kind of in a different dimension now. I mean, perhaps they could do that. Perhaps we could have a Carnage come over from multiverse, but I think that would kind of be complicating things. And it would also make the death of Cletus Cassidy quite inconsequential, and would kind of, ruin the fact that Venom just offs him. It does add to the comedy, and I think that's kind of why they did that, because as Venom exclaims, fuck this guy, and he bites his fucking head off. And it definitely, gets a roar from the crowd, but, man, I mean, you kind of just sealed the fate of the series when it comes to Carnage and future appearances. So I was kind of on the fence about that one. As the movie stands alone, I mean, it was an awesome part. Definitely a good way to cap things off with this gigantic fight. And the fight at the church is just astounding to me. I mean, I think that is just one of the fucking best fights we've seen in any Marvel film. I mean, it's Venom versus Carnage. What more can you ask for? And seeing all the different things that Carnage could do with his symbiote, I kind of would have liked to see him use that famous axe but we don't get that, so that was kind of like a missed opportunity in a way. But yeah, any type of little criticisms would have just been little tiny preferences. I was pretty happy with this film. I was thoroughly entertained. There was some great comedy. You know, even with Cletus Cassidy being the madman that he is, you can't help but smile when you see him. And there are comedic moments, and you know, and that's like the great thing, because he's like so evil. It's funny, but you can still take him seriously. So yeah, there's a good mix here. You've got some good performances. You've got good action. You've got good comedy. I mean, what more can you really ask for? I know there's going to be tons of people that are going to shred this film and say it could have been more and delve deeper, and I don't really understand why. There's just a lot of negative connotations surrounding Sony all the time, with the exception of the Spider-Man films. But I don't know, but with the first Venom film, it was kind of like a weird split for fans. There was people like me who truly loved that film and liked the direction that they took with it. And there was others that, you know, that hated it. Well, I gotta say, I'm on the fence of really liking these two films. And I think that this film went even further. And it went to places that, you know, really invoked memories of my childhood, watching Spider-Man 90s cartoon and reading the comic books, reading the Maximum Carnage arc. I mean, you know, all that stuff encompasses all together to make for just a very enjoyable film for me. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. And thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.